G'day everybody, my name's Luke Fitzpatrick and thank you for supporting Fish That Snag. Today's video is all about catching flathead.
Come on. Come on. Don't rush. Take your time. Oh, that is a crocodile.
Now if you're a person who's just trying lure fishing for the first time, whether it be with soft plastics or hard bodies, then this video is full of lots of tips and tricks that can help you increase your catch rate. I've made quite a few videos over the last 2 years about how I go about chasing flathead on the Fraser Coast. However, quite a lot of those videos have always been fairly short and more of the sort of music video sort of variety. So I thought what I'd do today is go into a lot more detail. The video is a little bit longer, but I'm going to cover off on a lot more detail than I have in previous videos, just so you can see how I go about targeting flathead throughout the Fraser Coast.
Ding a ding dang along, ding a ding dang dang.
Specifically, I'm going to talk about the outfits that I use, the lure types that I use, the retrieve techniques, how I actually decide where to go to target flathead. I'll show you how I clean them when I do actually bring them back, and of course the final product on the plate. I've also written about it quite extensively for Fish and Boat magazine. You can log on to their website. If you get an online subscription, you can go back in time, so to speak, and see all the previous editions so you can read those articles. Or if you like, I've rewritten a few of those and put them up on the Fish That Snag blog, which you can get to through the Fish That Snag website. So here's a couple of images of the equipment that I use when I'm chasing flathead. Generally, I'll fish a 1 to 3 kilo outfit, such as...
This is the Oztackle Camo Stick. It's a 1.8 metre, 1 to 3 kilo fast action spinning rod. And I've got it matched up with the Oztackle Verto 2000 size spinning reel,
and I reckon every fisherman has in their collection a 2 to 5 kilo outfit with about a 2500 spinning reel attached to it. It's a good all-round outfit and it's also perfectly suited for chasing flathead. I tend to favour this one here,
Masterclass rod and reel combo from Oztackle. It's the M2500 reel. It's their 7-foot Masterclass rod. It's a 2 to 5 kilo fast action.
Let's talk about flathead specifically, okay? Just a little bit about the species and how we can actually draw on our knowledge of the species and some of its attributes and characteristics and how we can target them specifically to increase our catch rate. Now, flathead are an ambush species. They love to lay in wait, half buried in the sand or the mud or in amongst some weed, wherever they are, and they like to look up and see the bait come overhead, and then they use that giant tail of theirs with so much power to come up underneath and smash their target. That's how they like to feed. Whenever I start talking about ambush species, I'm always reminded of the lessons I learned in the Australian Army. What do you need for an ambush? Cover and concealment, okay? If you look at flathead, their body and whole shape and everything is designed for concealment, okay? And they like to tuck themselves into areas where they've got cover. They'll bury themselves half into the sand and the mud, use that natural camouflage of theirs so that you can't see them. Trust me, I've walked through the shallows quite often and you almost step on the things before you even actually know they're there. Fields of view, or in the army we used to call it fields of fire. So you've got your cover and concealment, and then you want to have fields of view to be able to see the bad guys coming before they see you. Flathead are exactly the same, except they're looking for bait. So they want to be in a concealed, camouflaged position, but also be able to see as wide as they possibly can. And third of all, you want to choose the ground, okay? You want the ground to be of your choosing. Flathead are exactly the same. They want to choose the ground where they can lay in wait and where the bait are at the disadvantage. And that's why I love chasing them in the shallows so much, because up in the shallows there's not very many places for the bait to hide. They get forced into shallow water where they haven't got a lot of room to move, and the flathead love smashing them up there. An old army saying is that time spent in reconnaissance is seldom wasted, and it's exactly the same with fishing. Whether it be jumping onto Google Earth to scout out areas where you think fish may be hanging out, there really is no substitute than getting onto the ground and having a bit of a sticky beak. And I'm a particular fan of doing that at low tide, looking for sign that flathead are in the area. One of the most obvious signs that you'll find are flathead lies. Generally you'll find a couple in a particular area, and they're a wealth of information to tell you how the fish are moving throughout the area. It's also a sign that fish are there. So rather than rocking up to a spot and just, throwing your lure out there in the hope that there might be a fish, if you've done your reconnaissance, identified flathead lies, then more than likely when you tip up to go fishing, the flathead will actually be there. So here's a well-known spot within Hervey Bay that I quite often go down and test lures and things when I'm, the weather's blowing and things like that and I can't get out on the boat. But what's interesting about it is you've got a good area of cover and concealment on the left-hand side where there's rocks and a little bit of weed and things. And on the right-hand side, there's a little bit of a deeper channel before it gets to a sand flat. The water is actually receding at the moment, so it's actually coming from the top of the screen towards me as the tide is going out. So what I'm doing in this video is I'm actually throwing my lure as far as I can right up to the edge of the dark patch that you can see just in the distance, and this you look at a picture of a flathead, you'll notice on the side of it, the bottom part of it is quite a light colour and the camouflage is all on the top part, and you'll notice almost a perfect line down the side of flathead. That lateral line is pretty much the mark where they will bury themselves into the sand, and that line will be the part that's sticking up out of the top. And believe it or not, they're so in tune with their environment. All the sensors along that line in their body is what they use to detect vibration happening around them. That vibration can be noise from our voice or boat noise, anchors hitting the bottom, electric motors moving along, lures hitting the bottom. That allows them to tune in their sensors into that location. So they can be laying there in wait and a lure comes through the water, plop, comes down and hits the bottom, and they go, aha, what's that? Their eyes sit on the top of their head, so they're constantly looking up that way. All right, they will pursue bait and they will pursue a lure this way, but most of the time they're sitting there like that with a great field of vision, looking for what's coming over the top so they can attack it from below. So knowing these basic things about flathead as a species allows us to choose an appropriate lure type and a retrieve technique that takes advantage of those things so that we can catch more flathead. What do I mean by that? Well, they're very in tune with their environment, vibrations, anything, all right? So if you throw a lightly weighted soft plastic out there, nice colour, the jig head's going to enter the water and it's going to hit the bottom, and they will hear that. They will sense that from quite a distance away. The next thing, if you're using, say, a single hop technique with your soft plastic, so you let your soft plastic get to the bottom, you raise your rod tip, that lure is going to go up, it's going to sit for a bit and then start flattering down. So the fish is laying there, it's sensed something's happened because it's heard the jig head hit the bottom, okay, it's felt the vibration, and then all of a sudden it sees this thing come up because it's looking up, it goes, aha, so it's already tuned in on the general area, and then it sees this come up in the air and it goes, aha. Then it will either stalk it, so come from quite a distance away underneath it, tracking along behind it, or if it's fairly close, it'll just rush and smash it. And 99% of the time, they will smash the lure when it's up and starting to fall. Okay, attacking from the bottom. Let's talk about retrieve techniques. There's two retrieve techniques which I reckon are absolutely the bee's knees. Even the most experienced fishers out there will fall back on these two basic lure retrieves all the time because they're so effective. Because they're so effective, if you're just starting out or you're a beginner with lures, you need to practice and nail these two retrieves. They will form the foundation of 90% of your lure fishing. That is the slow roll. So you want to cast your lure out into your target zone and let it sink all the way to the bottom. You'll know it's on the bottom because your line will go completely slack. Then you want to start a slow but consistent wind back to your location. If you feel little bumps and things along the way, it means your lure's hitting the bottom and you need to increase the speed that you're winding just a touch until you don't feel those little bumps. And also a single hop retrieve. Same as before, cast your lure out, let it sink to the bottom so your line goes completely slack. Then remember, your lure is going to do what your rod tip does. So wind up a little bit of slack until you feel a little bit of tension on your lure and then lift it up to about 60 degrees. This will force your lure to leave the bottom and hop up in the water column and then start sinking back down again. And then all you do is repeat and repeat until you get back to your location. Remember, your lure does what your rod tip does when under tension. Okay folks, that's exactly what I mean by being a little bit too quick and hard to understand. That video had a really good response with people watching it, but I had so many questions about the actual diagrams. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through them in a lot more detail. 90% of my fishing is based on what you're going to see in these diagrams. Yes, I'm in a boat, but you can do the same if you're in a kayak. And if you're shore-based, you can do the same when walking along the shore, okay? But this basically is my approach to fishing all up and down the inside of Fraser Island. Whenever I find a decent drain or a creek, this is how I approach them. This is what I mean by targeting the points as you enter into a creek system. Okay, so we've got an identified drain or a creek and we've arrived at the mouth. First thing we do is assess the ground, and I can see shallow weed and shallow water over on the right, and in the distance a bit of a sandbar with a channel in between. So first of all, I'm going to hit the weed on the right hand side. Didn't have any luck there, so I've positioned the boat so I've got the wind behind me now so I can reach the sandbank on the other side. Alright, I don't want to put the boat where I think the fish are going to be. Now, using the wind to my advantage, I can cast and hit that bank, and straight away I feel a fish on the end, but he's not quite taking the lure. He's just sort of playing with it at the moment. The key thing is, don't do too much. Don't strike too hard. Just let the lure sit there and wait for him to take it. Later, when you get into the creek, using your sounder, identify ambush locations, not just points and corners, but also holes. And this is a perfect example of targeting a good hole almost at the entrance to a creek, just behind the 2 points. shallow water, these fish will get right up in the shallows, okay, in even less than 1 foot of water. This is definitely where I catch the greatest number of my fish, especially the big flathead. Anything from sort of 60 through to 80 centimetres, I catch them consistently right up in the shallows. It's also where you need to really have an electric motor. I can't really emphasise enough how important an electric motor is in this situation. I can put my main motor up, the electric motor down, and I can get myself within about 30 centimetres of water right up so that I can target these fish who are laying in wait as the last of the water sort of dribbles out of some of these drains. As for which lure to throw, well, after each fish in this video I've shown you the lure that it's been caught on. Here's a few others that have been very successful for me. I'm a particular fan when there's a lot of mud around to throw the Oz-Tackle Gizmo crustacean, and I literally throw it up against the bank and then sort of wiggle my rod tip a little bit to get the lure to sort of drop in, and it almost imitates a crustacean or a crab dropping into the water, and then I just use it like a I thought I'd lost her because she took that lure. That's the lure. Absolutely inhaled it. So I thought I'd lost her because gone right down. There's a bit of blood, but I managed to get it out fairly gently. Swam her for ages, as you would have seen, and she swam off strong. So that's 2 huge flathead in the one creek. Massive. Wow. Rightio, let's clean our catch with a really sharp knife. Just cut in behind the fin, down to the spine, turn the knife and run it through the rib cage along the spine all the way to the end of the tail. Repeat on the other side. Then you just need to split the fillet in half almost to sort of try and flatten it out because they're quite round. So I just run a line down as I'm doing here. Then use your pliers or just your glove, whatever is more comfortable. Slide the blade underneath until you feel the skin. And then just wiggle it, wiggle it, wiggle it and pull the skin off nice and easily. Last part, need to get the ribs out. I usually just leave them in, but the kids aren't a big fan of it. So you just need to make a small V, cut them out, and I feed them to the cat. There you go. I like to get a bit of beer batter, some chips, fresh veggies and homemade mayonnaise, and it's awesome. Thanks for watching, folks. I really appreciate your time. I know this was a long video, but thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching it. I really hope you got something out of this. And as always, I really do hope to see each and every one of you out on the water.